Oh no.
I fell.
Oh no.
Well, that was a good last run, I guess.
Hey everybody, we just all got together, myself, Bradley Ellis, Brandon Jones, and Michael Huber. We played some Back 4 Blood, a game we're all very excited about because we're big Left 4 Dead fans. We played some PvE and got wrecked there, and then we played some PvP where we wrecked. And I think, let's start with the PvE. I think it's safe to say that we were all pretty impressed.
Very impressed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Feels good, settling back in.
Right.
Oh, just the big thing is the way they've upgraded guns is such a huge deal. We spent 2 hours in that game, and I was still in PvE at the end, being like, "What is this weird rifle? Whoa!"
Yeah.
You know, like this is more World War One style, and like, "Whoa, this is a lot quicker and this is a lot heavier." And like that huge, big bullet thing, I swapped for something else right at the last minute, but there was still like stuff in my chosen weapon class that I was still checking out. Not to mention, like, didn't even dabble in sniper rifles, didn't even touch shotguns, like.
Snipers were very good in PvP. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, at the beginning of the match, there is, when you start in your safe room, like past Left 4 Dead games, there's a container you can go into. You can buy equipment like rifles, grenades, attachments, and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
at the beginning, you're kind of building out your loadout, but throughout we're going through, there's also stuff to find, but it never got to a point, which I liked, where I felt like I was messing with stuff too long. I wasn't sitting there for like a minute and 30 seconds to be like, oh man, I need this attachment, this attachment. It's very like fast and fluid.
That was my big takeaway.
You accumulate currency as a group, but you spend it on your own, which I liked. So like everyone was picking it up. It's coming to me, but then I'm in charge of my own loadout, which is nice.
Because with Left 4 Dead, I think the reason why it's so successful is how simple it is, and I don't mean that as a slight against it. Where it's like Left 4 Dead is the kind of game you could play with anybody. You know, I could play it with you guys who play video games every day, and we can crank up that difficulty and really stretch ourselves. Or I could play it with like friends that I haven't seen in 10 years and they can get it immediately. And with Back 4 Blood, I feel like all of the additions that they're making don't mess with that essential element of Left 4 Dead. Like, I was kind of worried about the cards. I was like, oh god, like the cards, I'm gonna have to read through all this stuff, I'm gonna have to make a perfect deck. And it's like, the way that it works in the campaign is you just get a few cards to start out with. They're really simple to understand. You're just drawing a couple, and then as you progress, you just get one more and then one more. And so it's like doled out simply enough, and I think the effects are simple enough that it really does, like you were saying, Brad, it doesn't bog down the game. It's not like you're waiting on one of us to like really figure out like, what does this card even do?
Yeah.
Which is nice.
For better or worse, I was super obvious about all my cards. I was like, duh, please, more ammo. Oh my, yes, you know, like, and you could tell, I mean, you could just even tell, Ben, because someone would have two sentences and you're like, all right, that's a little more nuanced. Like when you're this low on health, this kind of thing kicks in, and it's like, all right, this is my first couple matches, I'm not gonna mess with that. I just literally more ammo capacity. Let's go.
Yeah, and you like lose your gear when you die too, so it felt like you don't lose your money though, but then the shop changes.
Yes.
So it just feels like finding an optimal build really matters. Like you feel ownership of it, and it's really like you start playing a lot better when you have the tools that you want and need. And it just adds that kind of excitement, and you have to kind of adapt to new strategies all the time. Like Left 4 Dead, it's like, all right, give me my machine gun or shotgun, good to go. And this was like, you have to think about the cards, you know, maybe I'm drawing these cards which lead to like this play style of better, like this kind of equipment or weapon. So I really liked that it feels like every run can be pretty different depending on who you're with, who you're playing with, the character you use. They have different abilities. But to echo what you guys are saying too, not overwhelming, because the objectives are simple. You know, we got to get to a place and we got to get through these enemies.
And I feel like the changes that they have made from kind of the classic Left 4 Dead style, you know, you mentioned the shop and everything changing, but it's neat because, like, again, not complicated to understand, but let's say you get 1,500 credits to spend in the store. It's sort of like Counter-Strike, like buying before a match, if you're used to that. It is kind of a tricky decision because you can buy individual things, like you can buy attachments for your guns, or refill your ammo or health, or buy med packs, yada yada, or you can buy like team things as well, which is really cool, that kind of benefit everybody. But if you do that, that's going to kind of wipe out all the cash that you have individually. So coordinating with your team on those sorts of things is pretty cool.
But what I like what they do with the attachments is, so say you're doing like, if you haven't played this, your classic Left 4 Dead setup, where like once you get to the third or fourth safe house and like you've really invested a lot in your gun and you're like, okay, I got a purple scope. And so you're like, cool, I'm going to put that scope on and I'm going to chuck my old assault rifle scope. And I'm like, wow, I've been investing in my magazine. I don't even have a scope attached to this thing. Thanks. It's like, take that. And all this stuff just drops on the ground. Like, oh, I'm going to swap my first aid kit for a bandage. And like, cool, I'll take that first aid kit. Like I remember like this jealousy when I would go into rooms in Left 4 Dead and like the first person would grab the med kit. You're like, come on, man. Like, you're going into that room and you're getting a med kit if you really want one. So you really just have to invest on like how you want to improve, not like, well, I guess I'm going to die in 5 seconds because there's nothing I can do. Lots of options.
So there's, I think, 3 or 4 different difficulties. We were playing on the second one, so we bumped it up a little bit. Friendly fire was a concern, and I really think the difficulty was like almost perfect.
I kind of love the
I
friendly
felt
fire.
The same way. I felt
liked
the
it.
same way. Crouching down, checking corners. You know, I like the friendly fire was difficult. I was definitely hitting you guys numerous times, checking those sight lines, but it added to that pace, which I love. When we would try to get somewhere, we would be just this like Navy SEAL squad of like picking them off, each getting kind of our own area, watching our fire, and then we would get somewhere, maybe hunker down. So kind of that gameplay variety I loved.
And just like Left 4 Dead, I think, like, if you are talking to your teammates, you're coordinating things, you're using your resources correctly, you're sticking together, like, you'll have nice long stretches where you feel like you're really on top of things. But it just super punishes carelessness. Like, if you go too far out or you're not paying attention, like, the shift from like things going good to things going bad, how fast that can happen is like pretty intense.
And I remember the monsters having a lot of like just like being bullet sponges in Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, and like that's great, it's scary, but I remember sometimes just being like, enough, like another one of these things, and I would just see a big sponge instead of like, oh, a threatening enemy. And like these weren't that tough to take down, but like you get, any one of us got near those exploding enemies, like we're knocked back 20 feet, we take a ton of damage, not only knocked into a hazard, now I'm on fire, now I'm in a puddle, now
The bruisers were a really interesting enemy to me because they are bullet sponges unless you target the arm that they kind of hide behind them before they attack.
So you have to kite them away.
Yeah, you really have to kind of like feel them out or bait them or kite them, like you were saying, Huber, which is cool.
I really liked the ogre encounter.
Yeah,
that felt like
so fun,
familiar but different enough where he was like the biggest thing I've ever seen in one of these games.
And you see that giant health bar in the ogre, and you're like, oh god, this is going to be kind of what you were saying, Jones, like a really long, drawn-out fight. But again, if you just like are on top of your grenades, you just do incredible damage to him.
Yeah, and he went away.
So it's cool. Yeah, he goes away.
Him. Then he came back later.
Right, when we were stuck. Like, we had to get through him to get... So I wonder if that's like a risk-reward. It's like you can dodge him, but you're going to have to dodge him again. Or you can whittle him down enough, and then when he comes back, he'll have the same health he hid before, and then you can finish him off. Like, that was an interesting kind of mid to late level threat.
Yeah, I wonder if they're going to add multiple ogres at once,
God.
maybe
Harder
later on as you get
difficulties,
further. Again, it's a little early to tell, but did you guys feel the same way compared to Left 4 Dead, that you could travel away from the group a little more? Obviously, we have to stay together, but in Left 4 Dead, it feels like if you went a little bit away from your team, you were getting grabbed, you were getting leapt on. Whereas this, it was a little more forgiving, where you could explore and scavenge. Obviously, you want to stick with your team, but it felt a little more forgiving.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, for sure, and it depends on like where you are and what kind of thing that you're doing. But I think the thing that is cool and different from Left 4 Dead is there's just more to find, which is like, I think the levels in general are more fun to explore because like you're finding guns, you're finding money that you can use at the shop in the next round. You can even find like cards out there, which is really cool.
There's some
and
locked items too. We'd have.
Oh,
Yeah,
the locked
locked
items.
doors,
I love
yes.
that.
Yeah, you need toolkit.
I need a
Yeah,
freaking
you need a
toolkit.
Yeah.
Toolkit.
I love comboing the cards as well because there's one where you can turn like your push away into a knife attack that counts as a melee weapon, and then you can get health back for melee kills. And just putting those two cards together, it's like, oh, I'm getting a ton of health back, and that's extremely valuable because med kits are super uncommon, which is cool.
Changes up your playstyle a little bit too.
Let's switch over to kind of the PvP discussion. This is the first time any of us have done PvP in Back 4 Blood, and who kind of wants to explain the setup of it? Because it's a little bit different, similar to Left 4 Dead PvP, but again, a little bit different.
Yeah, it was like survival based, survival wave based. So there's 3 rounds, and it's whoever wins 2 rounds of the 3 wins it. And one team are the 4 heroes, and then the other team are monsters. And it's about whoever can survive the longest, whichever human team can survive the longest. So you switch sides each time. And the monsters you can be, the monsters from the PvE that we played, and you can pump them up. You can level them up during the course of the match, which I found really interesting. So for the big bruiser, you could upgrade their damage, or the vomit would slow them down more. But I found that one of the most interesting ones was you could pump up the common computer-controlled, just basic zombies, increase the amount of them, increase the amount that they slow down the team when they hit them. So some really cool upgrades that I'm sure you could really coordinate with your team and just be more efficient.
I dug the spawn system. So you have to spawn from cover. And so it'll say, like, okay, now you're hidden, and you'll see this, like, red ghost of yourself, even when the team is picking, like, they're prepping for the match. And so you can kind of ghost around them, and it's neat because you get a little lay of the land, and you can see, like, okay, if I'm a jumper, I can get to these rooftops here, and you get to kind of test your buttons and your movement. And I dug that. I dug kind of the risk reward of, like, okay, you can spawn now, but you can't spawn right in front of a dude. You got to, like, get in, go hide.
And these arenas were small.
Pretty
This
small,
was
getting
this
smaller.
was instant,
They would shrink.
chaotic.
Yeah,
Right
Battle
on.
Royale style. As
Yep.
as the survivors kind of go on in time, there's a collapsing circle, and if you go out that, these bugs attack you.
We learned the hard way.
Yeah, Jones. Yeah.
It was really fun, and it was fun kind of coordinating tactics with you guys, like in the second round, just being the exploder and like finding the perfect time to like just jump on top of them and do a ton of damage. Really, really fun. The thing I didn't like, especially as the infected, is like when you're playing as the survivors, you have this whole area where you're scavenging around and you're trying to see like what's out there, and you're talking to your teammates where it's like, oh, do you need this? And so it's very active. Whereas like the infected, you have a little bit of that, like you want to figure out like where you can climb up and where you want to ambush and stuff like that. But there's a lot of downtime, and so like by the second or third time that we were doing it, Huber, you and I were just like jumping on the roof, just like waiting for like a minute or two, and so that downtime was like kind of annoying, but not a huge deal.
Yeah, the respawns, you can die. You're pretty squishy.
Yeah.
So you die, and that respawn timer keeps going up. So it's like you die a couple quick times, and yeah, you're definitely sitting there for a few minutes, like out of alive for 10 seconds, but dead for 20 more.
Yeah.
But the vomit as well, I really liked, because I found that you could arc it up. They were camped on the top of the building, and I'm below them, and I was just shooting it up over into them, and they were all in the acid, and just the points are going up. Bing, 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 bing. Dopamine flowing. Loved it.
Yep.
Yeah. We had a full team, right? So it was just us versus another team, and with you guys, it was perfect because we could really coordinate. We could call out positions and that sort of thing, and just really be on top of it. I can imagine it would be kind of infuriating playing with randoms, like just solo queuing into a PvP match, especially as a survivor, because like you just there's so much strategy that goes into it that
Yeah.
you really need, I feel like, at least one other friend.
Totally.
I think it was after, because we did PVE and then we went into PvP, and after the PVE, like, if this was just the PVE, I would be super satisfied with this game. Like, but the fact that there's also this pretty fun PvP mode on top of it makes me really happy, and I just said after we did our first PVE thing, I was like, this is a good game. Like, I feel that pretty confidently.
Yep.
Like, this is Left 4 Dead 3, and not only in terms of, you know, the obvious comparison, but I also think in terms of quality so far.
Yep.
It's been really impressive.
It's wild to see it look so good because it feels like this Left 4 Dead 3, and so I'm just not used to these hallways like having detail, and I'm not used to like you really see these zombies up close. And Huber, I think we were saying earlier that like you can get a little way. It feels like maybe you can get a little further away. I think that's just because the zombies are just more well animated, like they just more naturally react to the damage they take and like to grenades and stuff like that, whereas like there were sometimes even in the best of moments in Left 4 Dead where like they just felt like mosquitoes. They're just like they're just like these things see me and then are just climbing over stuff so fast, whereas like they felt a little more obvious natural physicality to their movement. So
great
gave you a little
analysis.
half a second extra, but we still died a lot.
Totally, Jones.
Oh man, the birds. I love the birds.
Yeah.
The birds like car alarms in Left 4 Dead.
Yeah, I
love
love
that.
and the
dude.
birds, because we mentioned like building the decks and having it be positive effects for either you personally or for your team, but there's also corruption cards where certain modifiers will happen and it will add some extra challenge, and one of those can be birds that are randomly placed throughout the thing, and you can avoid them, but if you of course if you alert them, like you said, car alarms, Left 4 Dead, like you are it went. The birds fucked us like 3 times. I think. Just the birds.
Yep.
And the noise that they made.
I think I threw a grenade at some point, and it was like, oh god.
Well, we were in the jungle, and I'm just shooting just to see if I hit anything, and I hit the birds. I didn't even see them. I was like, okay, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
I love playing a game and like immediately like having a basic grasp of it, but then the more you play, like little tiny layers kind of reveal themselves, and you're like, oh, that's cool, because like my character that I picked started with a baseball bat, and the baseball bat wouldn't one-shot enemies, and so it was less useful than like my knife that I could do for killing. But the more I played, I'm like, oh, this sweeps in an arc, and so like if a bunch of them run at me, I can do a baseball swing and then just like stab, and it's like that's cool. Like figuring out that kind of utility is pretty neat, and so there's definitely, I think, sufficient depth there.
And the levels. The second time, third time, fourth time you do any of those campaign runs, you're like, I know this area. I know how far away we are. I know when to
Zombies
spend
coming in
those
through the
things.
roof, Jones.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So
yeah.
many times. I'm just like, how did he get there's this tiny little window. Like, damn it. Yeah. You fell. You slipped in the last.
Yeah.
You didn't know.
Yeah,
like,
it just
I
fell
can
to my
drink.
death.
Yeah.
And then I like too
lessons.
the fort. The fort has some kind of long-term progression, which I like in between.
The hub.
Yeah.
The hub
So-
kind of you can you earn
supply points.
supply points. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ben, and you can pump those into this character, and you unlock tiered rewards. The final one was a card to have
Yeah,
a
a
heavy
charge
attack,
attack. Yeah.
where you like leap forward and attack him, but it was like 100 points.
Right.
And we played a good amount, and we unlocked a total of maybe 100
Yeah.
plus. So it's
Well, it's
seems like a
cool
good progression.
because when you do, because they call it like runs when you go into the campaign and you're trying to clear individual levels. It will say at the beginning, like, if you accomplish this or like you make it through and no one dies, you'll get extra supply points as well. And so like having that charge attack cost so much, it was like, oh, I really want to complete these extra challenges,
Yeah.
which is of course like a very nice combo.
Yeah, one of them was carry a thing back to base.
Right. Yep.
Yep.
You have
Was
to
one of
find
the-
the thing. Kind
Yep,
of like
yep.
the gnome
Yeah.
from Left 4 Dead.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Like progression during a match, and then also outside of it with the cards and the supply points as well. So that all that stuff felt really, really fun.
Yeah. Guns feel good.
The guns feel good.
Feels
yeah.
good. World was pretty.
It's funny because like I would get attached to a weapon because I used a shotgun a lot in PvE, and I was like, "This is it. This is my gun." And then just upgrading it, I got more attached, and then every other weapon that I used, I liked just as much, but it had like a totally different function, which was nice. And the other thing that I love is I feel like in Left 4 Dead, it's pretty much all about your primary weapon. And like, if you don't have primary ammo, you're just so severely hindered. But I felt like my sidearms like were insane. Like I had a semi-auto, or I had a automatic. I had like a burst fire pistol, which was great. I had a Desert Eagle, which was great. Submachine guns, which were great. And it was like, it felt just as valuable as my primary, and I really appreciated that as well.
I learned more to like rely on that first gun and then only go back to the heavy, you know, like when you need to, when like the ogres start to show up and stuff. Like, okay, I need to hang on to that ammo as long as I can. But ammo being scarce is the name of the game.
I feel really good about this game overall. The only thing I'm kind of, no, I wouldn't say worried about is like the cards themselves and how powerful they'll get. I hope it just doesn't get to a point where like some cards feel mandatory almost.
Yeah.
Like I think that's inevitable with anything with balancing, but I think it's really cool that you can kind of customize your character to build around that you want.
Yeah.
But I just worry about balancing, I guess maybe. I just thinking too hard about it, probably.
Well, I like that you just add it to your deck, but then during the match, it's like you have to draw it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can have these like OP cards, but and then
Yeah,
like
you get a
depending
starter
on
card, but
yeah, depending on then your picks during that run, you might lean towards other things. So I wonder if Brad, maybe there's like, you know, potentially like 4 or 5 cards that you need, but then each one of those has like, you know, a build kind of associated with it. It's like, all right, I'm gonna pick these ones that, you know what I mean, like building around. But too early to tell. Who knows? But
yeah, it's definitely early impressions. Yeah. But I feel like between PVE and PvP, I saw like a decent number of cards, and there were definitely some that were extremely useful. I didn't see any card, and I don't know if you guys agree with this or not, but I didn't see any card where I'm like, well, that's clearly broken. Like, everything felt like a nice little... like, everything was useful, but nothing was, like, insane.
Yeah, there was definitely a card I had where it was, like, 15% more health. And I was like, oh, I'm going to want to pick that card a lot.
Yeah, if you can, yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe that's just the build. We haven't seen all the cards yet, so I guess it's kind of hard to say.
But even the 15% health is interesting and like kind of countered because when you go down, you'll lose max HP. So like you won't be able to, even if you heal, like you won't be able to go all the way back up.
That,
Yeah.
And in this world, 50% health is sadly not going to get you very far.
No.
So, you're clinging on to the 50% at the end. Be very careful.
But I had a really good time. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like we say this so much, but I cannot wait to play more with you guys. I'm sure. Like, this is a game where I think after you get done with, like, a little session like we had, you're like, I know I'm going to put a ton of time into this.
Yeah.
Like, I know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
And I think a lot of people are going to like this. So I'm excited to get more opinions from the beta. And hopefully, you know, it's always funny because, like, I think it is easy to have a good, like, couple of hours with a game like this, especially one that's kind of playing off that Left 4 Dead love. So hopefully the full game like is as strong as this it seems so far. Totally. So we'll have to wait and find out. But yeah, thank you for doing the session, guys, and for having this conversation.
Well, we're all still breathing, so that's something.
Dude, we made it! We made it! It wasn't pretty, but we made it!